this evening, we arrested a juvenile suspect in this case. The suspect was not a stranger. The suspect was known to the victim.
I'm going into the woods from the Cape to the east. I'm going to need more units here.
This is one of those cases where every bit of information is shocking and just hard to believe. This is Lily Peters. When she was 10 years old, she suffered a fate worse than death. And as her family was still in disbelief, they discovered it was someone in the family who had done this. A 14-year-old should not be able to even think about doing such things to another living being, let alone actually do it. But as we'll explore the life of Carson Peters, things will begin to make sense, unfortunately. This is the full story of Lily Peters. But before we dive in, I must warn you, this video contains graphic details of murder, SA against children, and pedophilia. You guys, summer is here and it begs going out and enjoying the sun. But you can't do that without looking and smelling great, can you? I recommend sunglasses, your cool purse, and Scentbird. If you haven't heard about it, Scentbird lets you choose a new designer or niche fragrance to try every month for just $17. Every month you get to pick what you want to receive, so no surprises. For me, this worked like a charm. I changed my scents with the seasons or according to the time of day or even my mood. With Scentbird, I get to try hundreds of designer brands, Gucci, Prada, you name it. And then I get started getting into niche brands that I wouldn't have even discovered otherwise. This month, for example, I'm really into Commodities Velvet Expressive. With notes of rose petals and vanilla flowers, it's the perfect add-on to any floral dress. And you guys, the retail price for this one is $135. A few months back, I would have said amber is my favorite fragrance note, but with Scentbird, I found so many new notes. I honestly couldn't give you a top 3. Saffron, sandalwood, why don't you try them out to find your favorite? And with these tiny vials, you can just pop 1 or 2 in your bag for later. No more overspraying at home. This month, I received Confessions of a Rebel's Get a Room, Rosy Bloom by Kenzie, and Align by Good Habit. Honestly, they're all perfect, each for a different occasion, and that's why I chose them, to complement each other and get me through the heat. Thank you, Scentbird, for the sponsorship. Use Uncovered55 to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird.
Go.
Can you show me how you do a pullover on your bar? What about, can you do a front flip on the ground or a round off? Do a handstand but then flip over? Now kick back over the other way. There you go. You're pretty awesome.
Lily Peters and her mother, Jennifer Early, were family goals. They loved each other deeply, had a lot of fun together, and Lily always had a wide smile around her mom.
I want to take your picture. Can you smile?
Jennifer had split from Lily's dad, Alex, so Lily would divide her time between her parents' house in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. She seemed okay with it. She got along with both her parents and enjoyed the different kinds of activities she could do at each house. With her dad, it was bikes, roller skates, and more outdoor time. So on April 24th, 2022, Lily was with Alex. That afternoon, she left on her bike around the neighborhood while Alex stayed at home. She was supposed to come home in a couple of hours. She knew the rules, and Alex trusted her. Lily was now 10, even more mature and responsible. But that evening at 9 p.m., Alex started worrying. Where was Lily? He hadn't seen her for 6 hours, and no one down his street had either. Lily was last seen leaving her aunt's house on the 400 block of North Grove Street, just a few blocks away from her own house. Alex decided to ring the police and report his daughter missing. But here's the first infuriating part of this case. The police wouldn't issue an Amber Alert for little Lily. To have an Amber Alert issued for someone, the person must be under 17 years old, in serious danger of bodily harm or death, and there must be a suspect or a suspect's vehicle described along with the child. But what if you don't know who the suspect is? It's crazy how many boxes have to get ticked to get an Amber Alert for your missing child. Yet every minute is of the essence in a kidnapping case. The more time you waste, the more likely it is they're dead by now. So why didn't the police take it seriously? When it became clear the police would take too long to start looking for Lily, Alex rallied up Lily's mom and anyone else who wanted to help with the search. The entire community of Chippewa Falls searched for Lily and looked for clues throughout the night. That night, Alex found his daughter's bike in a ravine near the cemetery. This was not a good sign. Early in the morning, the Chippewa Falls police joined in on the search with dogs and drones. At 9 a.m. on April 25th, 12 hours after she was reported missing, Lily's lifeless body was found in the woods just minutes away from her home and her aunt's home.
I'm going into the woods from the Cape to the east. I'm gonna need more units here.
The woman heard screaming in the background is Lily's poor mother. Imagine finding your daughter like this. Lily had been strangled and beaten to death. Her face was mutilated, and so were other parts of her body. After killing her, this real-life monster violated her body. She was naked from the waist down, and there were bite marks on her buttocks.
You know, and for the last couple of days here, since Lily first went missing, then her body was found in the woods. There's certainly a sense of on edge and fear in this town without having any answers.
It's hard to imagine the shockwaves Lily's death sent through Chippewa Falls. This is a 15,000 people town. It's known as an oasis of peace and natural splendor, and a perfect spot to raise a family. Lily wasn't the only girl riding her bike freely down the neighborhood streets. This was the norm in that small town. Now, people didn't know what to believe anymore. They certainly couldn't let their kids play out in the streets anymore. One of the kids posted on Reddit, "What's scary is I was playing Pokemon Go in the park that day, walking along the very same trail. My stomach turns when I think that I saw that girl in a pink/purple hoodie on her bike with another kid on my way out. I have a suspicion that it could be another kid that did it." Imagine living with the thought that there is a child killer on the loose.
Her killing has sent shockwaves through this small Wisconsin city. Schools and law enforcement urging parents to be vigilant and keep an eye on their children. Many wondered if there was a killer living among them.
Everyone's lives changed in an instant, and Lily's family was desperate for answers. Who would ever want to take a little girl's life in such a vile way? How could they miss a person so disturbed in a community they thought was tightly knit? Chippewa coroner Ron Patton concluded Lily's cause of death was blunt force trauma and strangulation. However, the Peters family would have to wait up to 6 weeks for the full medical report to be released. However, some answers came forth just a day after Lily's body was found, and the answers were far more sinister than anyone would have thought. On April 26th, people noticed a police car parked outside Lily's aunt's house for hours on end. Perhaps the cops were putting together a timeline of events. After all, Lily was last seen at her aunt's house, leaving on her bike with her cousin, Carson. But at the end of the day, the police arrested 14-year-old Carson and charged him with first-degree intentional homicide and first-degree sexual assault of a child under 13.
This evening, we arrested a juvenile suspect in this case. The suspect was not a stranger. The suspect was known to the victim.
A suspect is under arrest in connection with the tragic death of 10-year-old Lily Peters, who disappeared while riding her bike home from her aunt's.
As if the brutal death of a 10-year-old girl wasn't shocking enough, now people knew the killer was also a child. Carson was an 8th grader. He was also Lily's cousin and someone she'd played with hundreds of times before. How on earth could this boy want to kill his cousin and defile her corpse? Every news outlet in the U.S. was debating the same thing.
They'll know whether or not there were red flags that were missed, whether he had problems in school, whether he had been involved with the police in the past.
Exactly. The police were about to uncover the full story of Carson Peters, and it wasn't a happy story. Because of the intentional first-degree murder charge, Carson's case was taken straight to adult court. For justice, for Lily's family, and for most people in Chippewa Falls, this is good. If the case moves on, Carson faces life in prison.
We watched countless parents and their children lay flowers here at the memorial for 10-year-old Lily Peters. Clearly still shaken up that a 14-year-old has been charged with allegedly assaulting and then killing her.
For Carson, however, it is not good. If his case moves to juvenile court, he will get sent to a detention facility or a mental hospital. Then he'll most likely be released at the age of 18.
The question is if his attorney will appeal to move the case to juvenile court. That's the only way a case can move to juvenile court, and even then, a judge still has to approve it.
Compare that to a life sentence in prison.
There are no sentences in juvenile court. People are adjudicated delinquent and get court orders, but they're never sentenced.
If convicted in adult court, which is where this case currently is, CPB faces multiple life sentences.
Still, it's hard to feel empathy for Carson. Apparently, when the police went to talk to him and his aunt on April 26th, he blatantly admitted to killing and violating his cousin. Then he described in gory detail everything he'd done to Lily.
He did get off of the trail. The victim in the stomach, knocked her to the ground, essentially strangled her, hit her with a stick before, to the point of death, before he then assaulted her.
Carson also told the court on his first hearing that he wanted to rape and kill Lily for quite some time. That day, he invited her on a bike tour with this intent. She was on her bike and he was on his hoverboard. Once they were on the hiking trail, he suggested they went off the path to explore the woods some more. It was all planned. As soon as Lily went off the trail, Carson punched her in the stomach, grabbed a large stick, and hit her 3 times, strangled her, and then forced himself on her. In the middle of it, he got scared and ran home. There, he left his clothes in the laundry, showered, and made conversation with his mom so as to appear normal. When he realized people were looking for Lily, he panicked again. He ran back into the woods, grabbed her body, and moved it to a more secluded spot. There, he covered it with a bunch of sticks and leaves. But he didn't do a very good job. Within hours, Lily's body was found, and the autopsy clearly linked Carson to her, through DNA too. And yet, Carson's defense attorney argued that his bond be set at a meek $1,000, as he is too young to have a driver's license, and he is not a flight risk.
In light of his age and that circumstance, that setting that bond any higher than $1,000 is far beyond what's necessary to serve the goals of bail.
What do you mean, flight risk? Carson could be a danger to anyone in Chippewa Falls if released. Not just that, but he could have someone on the outside helping him escape town. The judge set Carson's bond at $1 million. It's surprising he set a bond in the first place, given the gravity of his crimes. But it's safe to say, his family doesn't have the money to bail him out. To everyone who heard the news, it made no sense that a 14-year-old boy would do this to his cousin. But as the police dug deeper into Carson's past, the jigsaw started falling into place. Carson had made several threats to Lily in the past. Poor Lily trusted him just because he was family. She never realized the full extent of his rage. And Lily's parents weren't aware of his threats either, so they didn't keep their daughter away from him. When it comes to Carson's parents, well, the story takes a really dark turn. Reportedly, Carson's mom, Lori, exposed him to drug use and other unspecified crimes from a young age. Carson was also exposed to a toxic, violent relationship between his parents. His dad, Adam Berger, separated from Lori when Carson was just 2 years old, but Adam was desperate to keep a close relationship with his son, no matter the situation with Lori. This was not what Lori wanted, though. Adam was vile. You'll see why. In 2016, Adam lived in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 20 minutes away from Chippewa Falls. That's when he was arrested for drug paraphernalia, including 4 crack pipes, but that was the least of his problems. That day, the police discovered possession of 10 explicit images of underage girls. Underage is a light word. These girls were under the age of 11, with their legs spread. In one of the images, Adam had superimposed his face on one of the images. He'd also commented under one of the pictures, "First in your little girl's apple, and then in your mouth, Mom." I'm speechless. Slowly but surely, we get an idea of how Carson ended up like this, though. In 2018, Adam Berger was charged for each and every one of those pictures and was facing over 100 years behind bars. Shockingly, he was released after just 3 years at the Oshkosh Correctional Institution. Reportedly, he still lives in Eau Claire, is on supervised probation, and is a registered sex sex offender. Meanwhile, Carson grew up with his mother Lori, Alex's sister and Lily's aunt. But according to his grandmother, Lori was a terrible mother. Carson always seemed miserable when in her company. Most people know him as the sad boy who looked at the ground and avoided eye contact at all costs. Reportedly, Lori also tried to keep Carson away from Adam and the whole Berger family. This only made matters worse. Keeping Carson away from his dad only made him more attached to him. Carson was desperate to spend time with Adam, and the same applied to Adam. Carson started seeing Adam as a hero, or at least a model. Interestingly, this is often what happens in the case of an absent parent. No matter how much one parent trash talks the other in front of the kid will see the absent one as the better one. It's an ironic twist, and many times a sad one, as the absent parent is usually the one who left and shunned responsibility. And in the case of Carson, it did a lot of harm. In 2017, for example, Adam wasn't allowed to have unsupervised contact with Carson. He'd already been charged with possession of pedophilia, and Lori was doing her best to keep her 8-year-old son away from him. But Adam stayed in contact with Carson anyway. One day, Lori spotted a vehicle in an alley behind her house. She followed it until it pulled into a random driveway, fearing it may be a predator. Well, it was a predator, her ex-husband. He was there to meet up with their son. Carson knew about this plan, and he excitedly jumped into the car with his dad. When Lori tried to stop the car from leaving, Adam simply drove over her, hitting her with the hood of the car as he reversed into the driveway. Lori reported this incident to the police. A few months later, Adam would be in prison for his previous charges anyway. Lori was hoping at least now he would stay away from his son, but the two would still email each other every single day and call every opportunity Adam got. He called his son. Then Adam wrote a long letter asking for unsupervised visits with his son. Yep, Adam worked at the hospital and as a karate teacher. He was around young, ill, and vulnerable people all his life. I wonder which is the cause and which is the effect, his sick impulses or his career choice. It almost sounds like the perfect parent if you didn't know he was a convicted and Carson was a child killer. Adam justified his request for the unsupervised visits by saying he was convicted for possession of illegal photographs, not actually essaying a child. Except there was no routine or normalcy in Carson's life. Adam's request was never granted, and yet he still had a great influence on Carson. Lori wasn't the perfect role model for Carson either. She had a long police record too. Several drug charges and a battery charge. Reportedly in 2005, she assaulted her first husband, John Davis. And at one point after her separation from Adam, she started dating John Repetto, a convicted fraud offender. Honestly, if it's just one convicted felon partner, I'd think it's bad luck. But Lori seems to have really poor taste in men. Just one quick look at his Facebook account is enough to send you running. Indeed, following Lily's death, people in Chippewa Falls started calling him out on his horrible posts. They even discussed whether John's influence on Carson may have affected his aggressive pedo urges. Wait, didn't he get those from his dad? Sadly, there were more such men in his life. The thing is, John enjoyed offending other people. Even when he came under the spotlight for his horrible Facebook, he continued to keep it public and instigated people to hate on him even more. He liked the negative attention. It's possible that was the only type of attention he ever got. But let's not find excuses for this scum. Just look at these posts. If you don't know who Ed Gein is, he was a serial killer who preyed on vulnerable women and made furniture out of their skin. And here's one of the grossest posts on the entire internet. I'm not even going to explain the 1,000 ways this post is wrong. You guys already know. And this picture, well, it doesn't even need a description. It just goes to show John Repetto is the lowest of them all. And somehow, Lori brought him into the home with her son. Side note, nope, it is not badass, cool, or manly to be aggressive or horrible to women. Also, not everything that's inappropriate is funny. There are many other ways to get attention and maybe not leave such a dirty mark on the world. Heartbreakingly, it's easy to see how Carson became the monster that he is. If all the adults in your life do drugs, commit crimes, promote pedophilia or aggression, you might end up doing the same just to be loved or accepted. The creepiness of the Peters family does not stop with Carson's side. Lily's mother, Jennifer, is now on probation for several counts of theft. Reportedly, she stole 4 credit cards from her own mother. Then she scammed her aunt and uncle for $10,000 for making up fake jobs. She also had severe issues with substance abuse. Sure, this is not even close to the extent of Adam's crimes, but it just goes to show the sad context Lily and Carson were brought up in. Now, lots of people are trying to use Lily's tragic story as a way to bring some positive changes to the justice system.
As a community, you never give up hope, and some good will come out of this. We just don't see it right now, but we hope good will come out of this.
Chippewa Falls has now been decorated with memorials to Lily. Lily's family also started a petition to create the Lily Alert for missing kids. The Amber Alert itself was also created after 9-year-old Amber Hangerman was abducted and murdered in Texas in 1996. Over 1,000 children have been saved directly due to Amber Alert since then. But Lily's family wants to point out that in many cases, the police don't issue the Amber Alert at all, as the case doesn't meet their many criteria. In Lily's case, it was as simple as no one knew who the suspect was. But in how many cases do people have a description of a suspect or their vehicle? Many times they just know their child is missing, and that is urgent enough. This case still feels fresh though, so Carson's fate is still up in the air.
The way I look at it is, and it goes back to my daughter, is I try and be the prosecutor I would want if something happened to my daughter.
Indeed, the prosecutor is looking at Carson's heinous crimes and advising towards a maximum punishment. In other words, he wants Carson to stand trial as an adult. But the wheels of justice move slow, and his attorney wants to take him to juvie court. However, the prosecution can keep him in adult court by pointing out a few factors.
What they need to show is that that child had malice aforethought, that that child premeditated their crime, and that the crime was specifically extremely heinous.
Carson seems to tick all the boxes here, doesn't he? Even the fact that he calmly confessed to the crime and added all the gory details unprompted goes to say something.
These acts are so completely heinous. In many of these cases, these individuals committing these crimes have lost their ability to empathize, and they are driven by their lust and appetites, and or they're just lust and thrilled to kill.
If Carson is so far gone that he's lost his ability to empathize, then a couple of years in juvie detention center probably won't do it. He needs to be kept off the streets. In July 2023, it was announced that the now 15-year-old Carson is awaiting another hearing to determine whether his case will be moved to a juvenile court. If this does happen, not only will Carson face a much lighter punishment, but the trial will be protected from the public. So we might never learn the full extent of his grisly crimes. Whichever the case, let's hope that he gets the appropriate punishment and Lily's grieving family gets some justice, whatever comfort it may bring. Hey, thanks for watching. What do you think about this case? What should Carson's punishment be? Let me know in a comment, and before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time. You guys, summer is here and it begs going out and enjoying the sun. But you can't do that without looking and smelling great, can you? I recommend sunglasses, your cool purse, and Scentbird. If you haven't heard about it, Scentbird lets you choose a new designer or niche fragrance to try every month for just $17. Every month you get to pick what you want to receive, so no surprises. For me, this worked like a charm. I changed my scents with the seasons or according to the time of day or even my mood. With Scentbird, I get to try hundreds of designer brands, Gucci, Prada, you name it. And then I get started getting into niche brands that I wouldn't have even discovered otherwise. This month, for example, I'm really into Commodities Velvet Expressive. With notes of rose petals and vanilla flowers, it's the perfect add-on to any floral dress. And you guys, the retail price for this one is $135. A few months back, I would have said amber is my favorite fragrance note, but with Scentbird, I found so many new notes. I honestly couldn't give you a top 3. Saffron, sandalwood, why don't you try them out to find your favorite? And with these tiny vials, you can just pop 1 or 2 in your bag for later. No more overspraying at home. This month, I received Confessions of a Rebels, Get a Room, Rosy Bloom by Kenzie, and Align by Good Habit. Honestly, they're all perfect, each for a different occasion, and that's why I chose them, to complement each other and get me through the heat. Thank you, Scentbird, for the sponsorship. Use Uncovered55 to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird.